Hello and welcome to the Global DIY platform and to this my seventh interview in the series Meet the CEOs of the leading home improvement companies from around the world. My name is John Herbert and I am the General Secretary of EDRA, the European DIY Retail Association, and GIN, the Global Home Improvement Network. Together, these two associations have 215 members operating in 75 countries with over 32,000 stores, and our members' sales in excess of about 320 billion euro. I would now like to welcome all our EDRA members, GIN members from all over the world, as well as our members of our partner association of the HEMA, the Home Improvement Manufacturers Association, who also have global members. I would also like to welcome all those delegates and sponsors for the next Global DIY Summit that will be held in Copenhagen, and to all our friends and colleagues who are watching this today. I'm delighted now to introduce my seventh interview partner. He's young, he's dynamic, he has a blue chip background, McKinsey, H&M, and since 2016 has been the Group CEO of Byggmax, the most successful reselling company in Scandinavia. So may I now welcome Mattias Ankarberg. Hello, Mattias.
Hi, John. Thank you very much.
Well, it's so very nice to see you. I only saw you last week, of course, on the Capital Market Days, which I thought was a brilliant presentation. And congratulations on your sales last year, plus 29%. And EBITDA from 10.3, EBITDA margin 10.3%. You must be sleeping very well indeed after those results.
Thank you. Yeah, it was a really good year for us.
So, Mattias, maybe you should start and tell the people following this interview today a little bit more about Byggmax.
Certainly so. And I think it's an interesting story and always interesting to start at the roots, so to speak. And the Byggmax was founded in Sweden just over 25 years ago by, well, three entrepreneurs who wanted to provide something new to the market. And their idea was to offer building materials to consumers at the lowest prices. And that sort of became the starting point. And it was actually not called Byggmax at the time, but it's developed from there. And today we're still a discounter, a hard discounter. We still operate in Sweden, but we are now in the Nordics. We've gotten fairly big on e-commerce. So we turned 6.8 billion Swedish last year, which is 700 million euro-ish, with 169 stores and about 20% of group sales as e-commerce. And as everybody, last year was a really rocky year, but we obviously were positively benefited in terms of sales. And Nordic markets were very limited in terms of lockdown. And of course, people have spent a lot of time at home and also money on home improvements. Yeah. That's where we are.
Well, I was amazed when I went to see it in 2009. I think it was, you hadn't been open very long at that time. And it was, I think you only had 3 staff in a huge place. It was the building suppliers, the suppliers put it in place, the customers took it away, and you had somebody taking the money and somebody to supervise. And I was amazed at the very lean concept that you've had. But obviously you've done many changes. And I know this is your 10th consecutive quarter where you've had an improvement in sales. So that's been very, very good indeed. But of course, we are now living in most difficult times. This dreadful pandemic doesn't seem to go away. I think we're all sick to the, well, yeah, I think we're all waiting for it to go. And here in Germany, everything is locked down. Even the home improvement stores are closed. And this has been so since just before Christmas. So we're looking to end. So tell us, first of all, a little bit about how the pandemic is affecting you and your business in the 4 countries in which you operate.
Yeah, and I think in some ways we are very similar to the rest of the European home improvement sort of industry and players. And then we're different in a few, which may be the more interesting parts to share. But I think in general, last year, our stores were generally open. We were allowed to stay open. This year it has changed a bit. We entered Denmark in January, and we entered with an acquisition which turned out to be closed stores. So Denmark has been closed for January and February. Norway is much partially closed. It's very local decision making in Norway, but at present, just a bit more than half of our store network is closed. And Finland is about to close, you could say, or actually introduce restriction of movement rather than closure in majority of the Finnish region. Sweden is still open, I would say. So it's been easier for us than for most last year, but it's getting a little bit more challenging right now. I think the second point that's happened is of course that people have been more at home, so demand has been really strong, and that in combination with the third point of suppliers having all kinds of opportunities and problems. So it's been a really rocky ride on the supply side, but overall we've managed it pretty well, and we've had sort of manageable negative impact, I would say. So I think I'm quite proud of the supply chain and buying team, which has, and many great supplier partners that have really stepped up and sort of gone the extra mile to help us out. And then I think last but should probably be first is of course the whole impact on colleagues, which I think has been maybe the most pressing and sort of top of mind topic now throughout all of last year and almost since just a bit more than a year now, really. And I think we have a lot of people that have really pushed the extra mile, but also you have to respect that we are quite strict, and no symptoms is the only way that we allow you to get to work. And there's been a lot of people that have been trying to do their most but didn't get the chance to, and of course people's lives are impacted negatively. So that's been probably the biggest shift in terms of extra focus on safety and health and safety for both staff and for customers. I think what's very different from us is that we've been largely open, and then of course e-commerce has exploded on us for the market and maybe particularly for us. And I think things like click and collect have just taken off enormously.
Yeah, I'd like to come back to about that in a moment, but we were very delighted that we managed to, with the Eurocommerce in Brussels, to say that we are essential retailing. It seemed to work at the beginning, but in Germany, the stores were open and now they're closed. How do you see yourself with this essential retailing? Do you think that the countries consider us to be essential retailing where you're operating?
Varies by country, I would say. So in Sweden and Finland, there are no restrictions when it comes to DIY, and the restrictions have been enforced on sort of shopping centers and other restaurants and other kind of more public places where bigger crowds are gathered. But in Norway and Denmark, we are affected and not considered to be essential as grocery stores would be, for example. So it's a mix between the markets.
Yeah, I think we've got to work on that going forward. Hopefully we're not going to get another pandemic, but I think we've really got to get that cemented in, that we are essential retailing. I mean, people are locked in their homes. They must have the opportunity of doing something in their homes when they can't go anywhere else. Right. And I think we must work even harder on that to make sure that we're considered to be essential retail. So coming back to your employees again, because it's a very important issue about they really have done a wonderful job, I believe, in keeping the business going. Have you had any real problems with the staff who didn't want to go to work because of some reasons, or how has been the acceptance of working in this pandemic?
No, I think in general, I'd say the staff has been sort of a most valuable asset in this period, both in terms of store employees, but actually also in terms of, we call it service office, but headquarter employees. And of course, there has been a few examples of people who have personal, very difficult situations, or maybe real or perceived, and we have to handle those with respect and accordingly. But in general, staff has really stepped up and helped out in an enormous way. And we've actually been fortunate also to get their help in recruiting even more colleagues, because we had a busy year. So able to reach out to both some individuals through our own staff, but also some close organizations like hotel chains and restaurant chains that had a really tough times, and borrow staff from them in peak times, etc. So the staff has almost, in addition to doing great work, and a lot of it, they have introduced new colleagues in a fantastic way.
Well, indeed. I mean, 29% increase. Are these going to be temporary employees, or are you just going to wait and see?
We have about 1/3 of our staff as seasonal staff or temporary, because we're up in the Nordics. It's fairly cold, and we sell mainly in the spring and summer.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of them are now getting permanent positions. So we'll see how it pans out. But we are very lucky to have received some really good people during 2020, and it seems that quite a lot of them like to work at us as well. So seems to be a win-win.
Yeah, good. I'd like to come back to you on the online and click and collect in a moment, but what have you learned from this pandemic, Mattias?
So, say that again, John, please. You broke up.
What have you learned? What have you learned from this pandemic is there anything you've learned from the pandemic that you didn't realize before? Any experience?
I think both internal and sort of external ones. I think it's been really interesting to externally see sort of the importance of the home. And, we've spent quite a lot of time trying to, partly with help from EDRA, reach out to others and see what's going on in markets and consumer behavior. And I think there's a lot to say around it. And we said a lot on our Capital Markets Day last week. But in summary, it's just astonishing to see how important the home is to people and how they are actually willing to spend money on it. So I think that was, a bigger factor than maybe we, at least I, had understood. And then I think internally, I think the way to manage these kind of crisis situations, if we call it, what it is, I think our approach has been, well, early on, we did a lot of sort of scenario planning and all kinds of, from basically Olympic gold medal to bankruptcy, almost a very wide span. But I think the approach for us that has been most productive has been to be really close to the business and have really close decision making and sort of to push that out in the organization and empower people. And I think that has been, we've found new ways to do that and new digital ways to do that. So I think that's made us a faster and more sort of productive company, I would like to say, and which is maybe big words, but that's been a big takeaway from us.
Yeah, let's just discuss this pandemic a little bit more. You've had 29% increase in sales last year. Do you think the consumer has rediscovered the home? Do you think it's temporary? And how do you see the next couple of years being after this very large increase?
Well, our view, and having spent quite a bit of time on this, both on sort of consumer research and listening to others and doing some thinking, and we may be wrong, but our view is that the home is more important after the pandemic than before the pandemic, and both for sort of functional and emotional reasons. I think there's largely a broad consensus that at least some people, at least some of the time, will work from home. Also after the pandemic, and we know that when people spend more time at home, they do more home improvement. That seems to be a sort of pretty proven causality. And then I think in terms of more emotional or sort of stay home kind of staycation almost aspect of it is also really strong. And we can see the people, at least up here, they're buying summer homes and pets and boats and what bikes and what have you. So I think the home plays a larger role in people's lives post the pandemic. It plays a larger role in people's wallets post the pandemic. And we believe that the home improvement market will be better than before the pandemic. Having said that, we believe, because we were in markets that were open last year, that 2020 were exceptional. So we think 19, 20, and then 21, somewhere in between, and then continue from there. That's how we are landing. But
22 will be better than 2020.
22. Let's see.
Probably.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, we the general feeling is that next year or this year is not going to be quite as good as last year, but the year after is going to be better than before the pandemic because people have really rediscovered their homes.
Yeah.
The other aspect, of course, in the pandemic has been the online business. You mentioned that. Just tell us a little bit about your online business and how it's reacted during the pandemic.
Yeah. So I'll start by saying, as a group, we operate the Byggmax brand, banner, which is sort of the vast majority of the group, 90%. And then We have two other smaller companies that are pure online companies that make up about 10% of the group. So, and then within Byggmax, which is then 90%, 11% of Byggmax is online. So which is higher than the 9% we are currently at in Sweden, and actually 8% in the Nordics. But still, so it's not a huge portion of our company, but it's a bit more than the market. I think two things happened in 2020, which were very fortunate sort of for our e-commerce business. One is that customers clearly moved to digital. We can see in the numbers, just as many others, that particularly during spring, it was sort of more the elderly customer that maybe went to online earlier, or maybe a bit more than before. But during, actually from summer and onwards, it's sort of the younger customer that is driving our business, and particularly the online business. So that was one thing, in terms of market shift. And then the other thing is we have spent a lot of work over the last 2-3 years to sort of increase our competitiveness on e-commerce, and we have completely changed the e-commerce platform. We have a new team, we have a new marketing approach, we have a new supply chain approach. So we've done a lot of work, and we already had pretty good traction in 2019. So it was a little, we have a lot of issues and we have a lot of things we can do better as a company, but I think here we were really fortunate. It's a little bit like having a sailing boat, and you got it in the right direction, the sails are actually up, and then you get a huge thunderstorm kind of force in the back, right? So we had a flying start, and the e-com only players in our market, and there are some bigger ones, they grew about 30%. The market here grew almost 20% in total market, and we grew by over 50% on e-commerce. And click and collect grew by 200. So there are some really big, forces in play in 2020 when it comes to digital.
So your total online sales then for last year was 20%, is that right? 20% of sales online?
Yes.
And how do you see it? I mean, I know you're an analyst, an ex-McKinsey, so you've obviously gone in. What do you see the online sales being in 5 years' time?
Well, I think it's going to for sure increase with our company, and as share of the market for sure. And we're actually doing a lot as well, particularly adding a lot of assortment, but actually also some other things. So we think we will be at north of a third of our sales in 2025 should be e-commerce. But we actually have pretty big ambitions to open stores as well. So if we wouldn't, then it would be even bigger, of course. But the total e-commerce business should more than double in 5 years' time.
But when I looked at your gross margins, if you're going to increase in your online business, your gross margins will probably come down. Yeah,
they will probably come down a little bit. But I think the other effect we've seen is, we're a discounter, so we're coming from a small assortment, limited range. And what you see in 2020, when we get this kind of growth also on the store side, is you get huge leverage with suppliers and logistics, etc. So gross margin, although e-commerce exploded on us last year, gross margin improved versus an already all-time high year in 2019. So yes, you're right, John, e-commerce will mix us negatively, but hopefully other things, as we have quite big growth ambitions, will sort of more than offset that, so we can keep a good gross margin going forward.
Okay. Well, let us now talk a little bit more about the Byggmax concept, because I think it's very unique, very special, and very different from anything else I've seen anywhere in the world. I think it's a very unique concept. First of all, I love the saying that you said, your slogan, that everybody has a right to a fantastic home. I may steal that for our association. I think it's a great
That's
thing.
Our business idea. Don't steal us.
Yeah, and you said
for
that people
small fee, John, we allow you to use it.
Okay. So you're in for, what is the 90% is Byggmax? Tell us a little bit, what is the ideal size today of a Byggmax store? When I saw it 8 years ago, it was 10,000 square meters, 9,000 was open air, and 1,000 was so what is your concept today of Byggmax?
Yeah, very good. We've actually moved from the one concept you've seen at the time, John, to 3 formats today. So we have what you saw, and then we have a smaller one to reach, which is even more cost efficient, to reach smaller catchment areas, be profitable. And then we have a bigger one where we have a wider range. And now, as we also announced last week, we're actually introducing a 4th one, which is a bit of a different one. I can go into if we have time, but our standard format at the moment is about 8,000 square meter plot with a 2,000 square meter building, of which just below half is a warm store and the other one is basically a storage. And we divide our format into sort of three parts. So we have the store, the storage, and the yard, which is sort of came from a traditional kind of lumber yard and then developed. And our format is, as you mentioned, John, is a couple of things that are important around it. First of all, is that it is low price, so it's self-service, and it's sort of designed around that. It's also drive-through, so not in the warm store, but in everywhere else, you could just bring your car and then load, soil into the back of your trunk or timber on the roof, or if you have a lorry. And then what we're also doing is we're trying really to focus sort of a quick and easy shopping experience. We want people not to linger for long because we believe that they would like to go home and do their project. So turn it pretty quickly. And when we design, this is a pretty intricate point that was well in place before I joined, back to the founders, which I think is amazing work. When you design a store format with sort of self-service in mind, you can create a format for which you can be extremely operationally efficient. So in low season, for the low hours outside peak, we operate many of our stores with one person. Really? Although it's a 6,000 to 10,000 square meter facility. And then lunchtime comes, and then maybe you're two. And of course, in May and big holidays and peaks, there is maybe 8 or 10 or even 12 people. But we have the operational ability to go very low in terms of cost, because it's designed that way from the beginning, so to speak.
But only one person in the store?
Yeah.
Yeah. Gosh, what is your
then you
leakage?
have to be really efficient, when the delivery truck should come, and when the customer flow starts, and when the second guy should come in, because you need to plan your customer streams accordingly. But for the very low parts of the low season, so the low hours of the low season, we run one person.
What I like very much is your opening hours. You're opening them from 7 o'clock in the morning to 7 o'clock at night. Yep. I know some people open till 8 and 9 o'clock at night. I've never found that personally very productive, but there we are. So what would you say, you mentioned in your Capital Markets Day, your DNA. What is your DNA?
Well, our DNA comes back to sort of what you said, John, about everybody has the right to a fantastic home. And there's, I think, nice wording, so nice pieces of thought around almost each word. So everybody means that we need to be for everybody. Then we need to have prices affordable for everybody. And the right to a fantastic home actually also means something, because we would like to offer them. It should be easy. We would like to give the advice and the availability and the support for people to actually dare to do DIY or do their things. And then the home is really important to us, and because we came clearly from building materials, even heavy building materials. But today, and this is the journey we've been on for the last 2-3 years, would like to broaden that much more and offer home improvement projects, as we call it. People today, and you will be aware of this, John, but are less inclined to maybe renovate a complete bathroom on their own or do a big roofing job. And I'm sure maybe not the insurance company would be so happy if you did. But I think people are really passionate about garden and painting and fixing storage. So the DNA for us is to be for everybody. That means really low prices, and then be on the customer side in terms of quick and easy and helpful. And there's a lot more detail to that, and I can spend hours talking about it. But just as an example, we talk about the lowest prices, but to us, it's really important that we have the lowest prices. So we said it from the start. We have a very generous price guarantee, not just exactly the same product, but a similar product. We have a very generous return policy. We would like to have the right price from the start, so nobody ever gets a discount on anything. Nothing is negotiable. It should be right from the beginning. So there's a couple of sort of really detailed aspects to all parts of that business idea or vision, or what you call it, that we really try to ingrain in the organization to make it solid. You need to choose. If you try to be too much for too many, you end up being not much for not too many.
Indeed. But you're driving sales. You're with your 29% increase last year, you're well above the average, although people have done very well, but you're very much on the top end. So what's driving your sales? What are the factors driving these sales going forward?
No, that's a good question, John, and we've done some analytics around that as well. And I think now we have actually good markets numbers for both Sweden and Norway, and we know that the market grew by 19 in Sweden and 20 in Norway, the B2C side of the DIY market, and we grew by 29, as you say, or even 32 in local currency. So there are three things that make up the majority of that outperformance for us. And the first one is e-commerce, which we grew by 50%. That adds about 4 percentage points in terms of sort of outperformance. Then we have an initiative that we call a bit internally maybe phrased, but called Store 3.0, where we're basically taking all of our store portfolio and upgrading it towards these new concepts. And that actually gives 6% like-for-like sales per store. And we've done a lot of those conversions. That also adds really good sales in 2020 and will continue. And then the last one is that we are still opening new stores. And I know that's not always the case in retail and not even in home improvement, but we opened 10 new last year, and that gave 4 percentage points. So all in all, the market, we grew faster than the market, and the vast majority of that is due to upgraded stores or converting to new store formats, e-commerce and new stores.
Yeah, before this interview came, we showed a film of your new Big Mac store, and we're going to show it after the interview again for people to watch it. What impressed me most of all, you say you're a discounter, that's your DNA, your low prices. Yep. And yet in this new format, you're looking very much like a specialist store. I look at that flooring department, for example. Now, I think my experience is that people underestimate the consumer. And you can be a discount, but you can still, and you are proving now by looking like a specialist store in this sector that you've had a huge increase, I think.
Yes, enormous. Now, I think you're right, John, and this was part of the outlook. And you may remember when I was new just a couple of years ago, and I called and emailed you to sort of a painful extent to get hold of all kinds of contacts to learn the industry. And I met a lot of people within DIY, and thankfully so. And I met a lot of retailers outside DIY, and I knew quite some from beforehand, given the background. I think one of the interesting things is when you are a discounter, you could either, just stay focused on the lowest prices, or you could actually try to say, let me offer value for money, still really low prices, but actually a really great experience. And I think, in my view, I think IKEA has done just that. I think Lidl, the German example, at least with their newer concepts, are doing, something similar. So just offer something really, really nice, but still a very great price. And it's a huge challenge, but if you think that through and, are able to sort of hopefully pull it off, you attract new customer segments. There are a lot of people who want to make, we did a mapping of consumers in the Nordics. The biggest consumer segments are just price hunters, but we have a lot of those already. But then there is a huge segment who would like to make a great deal, but don't want to be associated with poor quality or, annotated with quality experience. So there's a lot of consumers that you can capture if you really think it through from their perspective, what it is that they would like to see. And that is, the new store concept that we're rolling out. That's what we're upgrading towards, and that's giving a really nice sales effect. So it seems to work, at least in the Nordics within DIY. And then we'll see if it's long term, but so far so good.
Okay, so you're not really worried then when you look at this store that we've shown before the interview and afterwards, that you're going such that you could lose the discount image that you have at the moment. Maybe your biggest strength is your low prices, and yet this is looking a very nice, special, a little bit more special. You're not worried about that then, losing that sort of?
Yeah, no, I am a little bit worried about that, but I think my experience, and also going back to time at H&M, etc. What you need to do when you're trying to be more for more consumers is you need almost to at the same time do more of where you're coming from. So we need to communicate even stronger that we have the lowest prices and the offers. So that is a really important part of our marketing and about our store signage and about to really reinforce in the consumer's mind that yes, it's a nicer experience, it's a broader experience, but it's still the lowest prices. So Can't lose sight of it. Then you lose it.
Okay. You're doing at the moment, you said it's about 700 million euro at the moment sales, and yet you're intending to increase to about 40% in the next 5 years, I believe. Yeah.
Yep. Yes.
So are you not worried? Is the market there for you to? I mean, there's quite a leap, isn't it? And then you're going to do 33% possibly of your sales in online sales. What makes you so optimistic?
Well, I think we like to have ambitions, no, but I think it is. I think it's back to sort of the fundamentals of this industry, that it's an enormous category. I mean, you know this, John, but depending on how you define the market, home improvement or DIY, it's the number 2 or 3 retail category on planet Earth, right? Groceries by far the biggest, and then it's apparel or home improvement, depending on how you cut it. And if we just look at our little small corner of the world up here in Nordics, what we call DIY, B2C, or consumer DIY, was a bit 120 billion Swedish market last year, about 12 billion euros, and we turned 700 million. So, there's plenty of space to continue to grow. And I think, the plans that we have, 10 billion Swedish, or just north of €1 billion is ambitious, but it's not just sort of pull out of thin air. We have concrete plans for how to get there. So yes, it's going to be tough, but it's doable.
Okay, so you've now got 169 stores. You're intending to go to 280, if I remember correctly what you said.
Correct.
So that's quite a step. The other thing I wanted to ask you, that everybody was saying 2 or 3 years ago, the DIYs are dying off. People like me, they're going and they're getting older and they're leaving this world, and then the next generation. But now we're hearing that the millenniums, yeah, they're really coming into DIY. Is that your experience too?
Yes, that's very much like experience. And I think that's almost like a 2-step answer to your question. I completely agree that is the perception, exactly how you phrased it. And I think, first of all, the perception was maybe more than misunderstood, maybe just outright wrong. I think even before the pandemic, if we look at our markets, the average age of a DIYer here is 45, 46 years old, just like an IKEA customer. Only 1 in 10 always use contractors for everything. It's actually been decreasing for that couple. So I think the pandemic has boosted or sort of accelerated that trend. And we clearly see in our numbers as well that younger customers are the ones that are driving the sales growth in the second half of last year. And it seems to be the case also now in the beginning of this year. So I think there is a case for more people and more sort of segments or generations discovering their home and home improvement. And as you know, John, the best thing you can have as a retailer is to have customers, right? So
absolutely.
Don't screw up. Happy customers that come back.
Nothing excited me more than seeing a store full of people and the tills ringing. I think it's
exactly.
Yeah. I always remember I was the president of the Lions Club, and they asked me what culture was, and I said, when all the tills are ringing, but they didn't appreciate that comment. Probably it wasn't the right thing to do. Yeah. So let's go back to e-commerce, because it really is changing the world, and I think it's changing the world for the better if you take this opportunity of the stores and things. How do you see the physical stores and the online? Do they complement each other, or how do you see that?
Well, we've done a lot of digging in that as well, and I think the combination. It's a cliche, but I think in our case now we have the data to prove that the combination is by far the strongest. And I can give you a couple of examples. So if we look at, for example, a category like heavy building materials, timber or sheet materials, or that's low value compared to logistics costs, clearly expensive to ship around a big country like Norway or Sweden. So we use our stores as sort of fulfillment centers for all of that. And by that, we take huge market share in e-commerce on that side. I mean, showrooming is becoming super important. And for us, 25% of all people who buy a flooring have been to the store before and got a sample. So that's also something growing really fast. So the store, in that respect, for flooring acts as a showroom. click and collect is growing like crazy and represented 18% of all orders last year for us on e-commerce and growing by more than 200%. So clearly the store acts as a pickup point. And actually just having a store helps e-commerce. With the analysis we did is when we open a new store in a geographic area, e-commerce in that area increases by 15%. So there's clearly something here about, and then I think people have to stop talking about the e-commerce and stores, talking about how to make the best experience for the customer. And I think clearly having both is advantageous. Then you need to make it work. And that's the hard part, right? To get it together. And but it's a really nice combo.
And I think you're doing a remarkable job when I heard about what you're doing about deliveries and how you are managing the deliveries, because this is a very important part. If I can order from Big Macs and get it delivered. So tell us a little bit about your delivery service, what you've done.
Yeah, so we've done a lot on deliveries, and we believe, our sort of basic view of the DIY customer, at least here, is that they would like to spend their time doing DIY projects, not so much spending time in the store or waiting for my order delivery to ship. We say that deliveries are part of the sort of offer. It's part of what we offer to the customer, and we take a two-step approach to try to be best in the market on deliveries. And the first step is done, and that is basically to introduce a whole range of delivery options so the customers can choose how they would like to have their goods delivered. And we have introduced Express, Choose Your Day, Collected Store, Pickup Point, a couple of others. And you could see that for each one you introduce, you find some unmet customer demand and sales increase. So that is one really important part. And then the other sort of second step of deliveries in e-commerce that we are actually launching now in 2021, which we believe a lot in, is for us to take responsibility for transparency around deliveries. And this exists in other retail categories, but at least not here in the Nordics in DIY. So we would like John to know that when you place your orders, you will receive this on Thursday. And if it's delayed, we'll let you know in good time. If it arrives earlier, which actually happens, we'll also let you know in good time. And you can anytime click your link and find out what the status is. But if something changes compared to what we've told you, we will let you know. So you're in safe hands, you're in Big Mac's hands. And this is something we have now launched in Q1 for parts of the assortment, and we expect that by Q3 we should be fully rolled out across the markets with all of the assortment. So when you shop at Big Mac's, we control the delivery status for you and let you know if anything happens. It's very common in other categories, but at least not
in DIY. Yeah, I find it amazing. So you can say, if I order from you, I'll deliver it on Thursday at 11 o'clock. And if it gets delayed, you ring me up and say it's delayed, it's coming at 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock.
Yeah.
That's very good.
And the funniest thing happens, John, right now, when we have these out and starting to deliver it, and then sometimes things show up early, right? And the customer reaction you get when somebody gets a message and say, actually, we're going to deliver a little bit earlier than expected, they become super happy and share it on Facebook. So it's just being a little bit on the customer side and thinking through from their perspective, what would be helpful. I think this is going to be a good thing for them.
Yeah, my wife would be one of those who's happy. She's always happy when it comes earlier, and she can then feel free to do what she wants to do.
Right.
Yeah. So coming back to your online, I mean, the SKUs that you have in the store, how many SKUs do you have in a typical Big Mac store?
Around 4,000, ranging from 2.5 to 7, but 4 most months. So very
lean, very lean. Yeah. And on your website?
Just now, as we speak, 51.5 thousand, so just north of 50,000 SKUs, which is, of course, a lot more than we have in stores, but still not a lot if you compare to, the big ones, or if you would walk into a German big player in a physical store, or even, I think Lowe's had a press release out. They have 2 million now on their website. So
2 million, yeah, amazing.
I think there's plenty to go there still.
So a lot to do. Yeah. Okay. We talk. So the store of the future, really. Let's talk about that. Really, you said the store of the future is where you get your goods, where you have click and collect, where you have a showroom. Is this the future? And the fulfillment center, of course, for all the online products. Yeah. So
we believe so, and we believe that we call them maybe a bit homemade wording, but multi-purpose stores. So we think that I don't know if somebody comes up with a better phrase, let me know. But I think still the store is the sort of core of it. You can walk in and buy products that exist on the shelf and get support from a sales advisor. But there will be many other functions fulfilled by that store unit as well. And then we have a separate belief that, to move, the store should be conveniently located for the customers. So that's another sort of initiative that we have to try to develop a format where we could move even closer to customers' homes to sort of make shopping even easier.
Yeah, one thing about your capital, the presentation I saw the other day, you said very little about the climate change, and I know you're doing so much. I think you're a leader in one of these areas. I would have thought you'd have expressed that a little bit more, because I think it's you win over the consumers if you really genuinely, as you do. So could you tell us a little bit about what you're doing about the climate change and corporate social responsibility generally?
Yeah, no, it's a very good point, John. And we had, to be honest with you, a little bit behind the scenes, a big debate of how big of a topic we should make sustainability or climate change. And I think we also included in the event basically a short page saying this is a huge topic, but we have to prioritize for this day. With these digital forums, you can't keep people for too long. But you're right, it's a core topic for all of us, and it's the biggest topic of our time, maybe. I hope at least so when the pandemic is over. And we've done quite a lot, but to be frank, there's a lot more to do. We're quite, if you map Byggmax out versus the UN 17 goals, I think we're quite actually good on some of them. Particularly on the social side, where we bring a lot of young people into employment, and we have a pretty good on gender equality and a lot of other things. But where we are making negative impression is the CO2 emissions. We've done the last couple of years a quite big work on our most direct impact. So we now buy sort of renewable energy. We have LED lighting. We do electric forklifts. But where we are now shifting the focus is somewhere between scope 2 and scope 3, you could say. It's around transportation, where we believe that, yes, it's not our trucks, it's the suppliers, but we can actually make a difference. So we have set the target for ourselves to really reduce those CO2 emissions by a lot. We measure it CO2 equivalents by ton and kilometer, and we would like to get 70% below where we were in 2010 by 2030, and we're currently at 32% below. So it's a big topic for us. We've done good things, but there's a lot more to do. And just as a reflection, one of the things, we actually had a management meeting around it yesterday, and one of the things that we need to do is to work with people like yourself, and I think maybe other associations, because there are some topics that will be much better addressed as an industry or as a body of companies rather than standalone. So big topic coming up.
Indeed. Well, we're at Edra and Gin, we're very active on this corporate social responsibility. We have committee meetings, we look and we follow the supply chain to make sure there's no child labor and that people have very safe working conditions and everything.
Yes.
Yeah, so let us now come to the questions. We've had some questions sent in. I haven't looked at, let's see now. Anders Nielsen, with growing e-commerce, do you see a need to share online reviews connected with your products presented on the web? What we have seen is most helpful to customers is actually not reviews, but to share around inspiration around DIY. So less around the specific product, but more about the end result. So we have started to share, customers' social media posts on our website through technology that we are introducing, and that has proven both more sort of requested and more popular than some tests we've done with reviews. Talking about the online and the social media, do you use that a lot at Byggmax? More and more.
We were very limited, to say the least, just a couple of years ago, but it's becoming at increasing speed a quite big factor for us.
Okay. We've got a question from a young lady called Anna. Younger customers are a growing part of delivery business. Are you adapting your business model to target these customers? I think you've already mentioned.
Well,
driving business, sorry.
Silver bullet answer to, go ahead. Yeah.
Sorry, younger customers are a growing part of driving business. Are you adapting your business to the target these customers?
Well, I think Anna is making a good point. I think there is no sort of silver bullet strategy to the younger customers, but I think we're building out e-commerce and delivery options and making great, nicer stores. That seems to be helping at least. So I think that's the short and honest answer to Anna.
Okay. And now we've got a question from Paul. Amazon launched in Sweden in October 2020. Do you see this as competition for your business?
Good question, Paul. Well, I think nobody should ever underestimate Mr. Bezos and Amazon. But I think so far, Amazon in Sweden has not been really focused on DIY. There are a couple of categories which are sort of closely connected to electronics, power tools, for example, where they are active. But so far, they have mainly been pushing media and those categories. So far, no. Over time, probably.
Okay. And now I've got a question from Thierry Kerman from Belgium, who has said, in which regard do you believe, Mattias, that the Big Macs model can operate as a worldwide concept, leave out the consideration, the service of the store, big box or proximity?
Say that last part again, John, please.
Yeah, I'll read again. In which regard do you believe that the Big Macs model can operate as a worldwide concept, leave out consideration, the service of the store?
Well, maybe Paul would like us to do some research on Bahamas and Barbados as the next step. Would be a nice entry. No, but I think it's a really interesting, big question to say, does this model, have potential in other markets around the world? And I think the honest answer to Paul is that it hasn't been tested yet. We just entered Denmark here in January. But we believe that there is a potential for small format discount stores and being big on e-commerce, but we also have a lot of respect for that the DIY industry is local in many aspects. So don't know yet is the answer.
I would answer yes.
That sounds good.
Okay.
Let's talk afterwards. Maybe you have some ideas.
Okay, let's talk to Frank, a gentleman called Frank. As you said, staff have gone the extra mile. Have you initiated any specific programs to support your staff mentally or physically?
Yes, we have. I think we have been extra on sort of support in terms of health, safety, coaching, those kind of, both through the direct leader, but also through some external companies. And then we are a low-cost operator, but of course, a lot of people have been generously rewarded in terms of bonuses, both individual bonuses, performance bonuses, but company-wide Christmas gifts, etc., and things like that. So within the Big Macs boundaries, we have been, it's been a very generous year, 2020. And then one of the nicer things, I think, is that when you grow and you grow fast, it creates a lot of opportunities for people. Mm-hmm. So just these last couple of weeks, just last week, there were 2 new stores open with 2 new store managers that got promoted. And there were 1 new person in the service office that was previously a store manager, now relocating to Stockholm to take on a quite big leadership role. So I think that's also one of the nicer aspects of this, to get opportunities for more people.
Indeed, there's nothing like growth for buzz for the people and to bring people forward and working in a dynamic, growing company. I've had the pleasure of working with the Home Depot, and I know what it's like. The spirit is unbelievable. So I could talk to you forever, but we're now coming near the end of our interview session. So Big Macs has been a member of EDRA since 2009. So I'd like to know your opinion. You're part of the younger generation. How do you find an organization such as EDRA yourself? I haven't asked this question, it's not been prompted, so I'm very looking forward to your answer.
Yeah, no, but I think EDRA is becoming, it was always good and important, but I think it was a new level of importance and relevance during the pandemic. And I actually think if EDRA and we together as an industry play our cards right, it will be for the future as well. And And what I mean by that, I think when I was new to the industry, it was super helpful to connect with these people and to learn and to be able to bounce ideas and participate in some joint things that you were driving. But I think particularly when the world is spinning so much, to have that network and to have that partnership of people you can reach out to, I think Edra played a huge role there, also pushing the agenda at sort of EU level. And I think I hope we will get rid of the pandemic, as soon as anybody. But I think there will be quite dramatic changes to the retail landscape in the next couple of years. Maybe not that sort of pandemic speed, but e-commerce, sustainability, other factors that will be really important. And here I think Edra can continue to be a really, really important force and support for all of us. So hugely helpful, hugely helpful.
Okay, yeah, that's very encouraging to hear. So thank you very much indeed. Well, you've been our guest. We could talk for a long time, Mattias. A lot of things we could talk about and discuss. So is there anything you'd like to say, your last word to all those people following at all? Anything you'd like to say?
I think thank you for a very nice interview, John. Well ran, and I think we of course hope to get the opportunity to meet physically sooner rather than later, all of us. And in the meanwhile, I mean, I've been fortunate to be have the support from many colleagues when I was new and during the pandemic. And if there is something Big Macs can do or we could do to give something back, just reach out. So
okay,
John
well, thank you. Yeah, well, thank you very much. And for all those people watching it, stay tuned, because following this interview, you'll be able to see the new 3.0 new Big Mac store that's been done. I'm very impressed with it. I think it's going to be very successful. So that concludes the interview today. My next interview, my 8th interview partner, is going to be the first time a lady. She is Veronica Valdez, the CEO of ProMart in Peru. She came with us last year to South Africa on our study tour. Very dynamic young lady, and I'm sure you would be hearing a different concept. I'd also like to remind all our people following this session that the next session on this global DIY network is on the 12th of April, when Ken Hughes and this most dynamic young lady, Victoria Neuhofer, who oozes with innovation and ideas, is going to talk about her new concept, zero waste DIY. So to all our viewers watching it, and particularly to Mattias for your time, for your expertise, it's been a delight to speak to you. Thank you, and I wish you continued success as the Group CEO of Big Macs. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you.